afternoon, Bay Nation. Welcome to another episode of Fantasy Bay. I'm your host, Mike Williams, and today we're going to be going over the Miami Dolphins versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Starting off with the Miami Dolphins. Starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa, is going to be back in the starting lineup. I don't think you should start him, but I am happy he's back. Moving on to the wide receiver position. Devontae Parker's going to be out in this one. Jalen Waddle has been 70th or worst in the last 2 weeks, which is obviously not good. But I do think he's going to be a flex play this week. With Devontae Parker out, he'll probably be the top receiver that they end up going to, assuming it's not going to be Mike Gesicki. Moving on to the running back position. Myles Gaskin had a great week last week, catching the ball, running it. It looks like they're getting him involved in the passing game. Fire him up. I think he's going to be solid this week. I have him in as a low-end running back too. Moving on to the tight end position. Mike Gesicki is a solid play this week, considering the fact that Devontae Parker's going to be out. They're going to have to throw it to somebody. I think Mike Gesicki is going to be a reliable tight end for them. Moving on to the defense, I think you can start them as well, and I guess you can start the kicker. On to the next team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Quarterback Trevor Lawrence, I think, is a fine start this week. He's proven he can get it done with his legs, and he's not too bad with his arm either. I don't see him as a top play, but I do think that if you're desperate, he could be a solid fill-in. Moving on to the wide receiver position, I think that both Laviska Shenault and Marvin Jones are flex plays this week. I'm not really excited about either of them, but I do think in a pinch you can play either one. Moving on to the running back position, James Robinson is a start every week. He's been playing fantastic. He's been top 10 these last 3 weeks. Fire him up every single week. Moving on to the tight end position, no. Defense, no. Kicker, no. And that's going to do it for the fantasy breakdown of this episode. Up next, we got Pigskin Pick'em. The Miami Dolphins are 3.5-point favorites in this matchup. Give me the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jacksonville Jaguars are at home. They get 3.5 points, and I just think that this is going to be closer than that. The Dolphins haven't proven that they're going to be good this year. The Jaguars have been meh so far, but I think they can keep it within a field goal. Like I said before, I'm not super confident about this one, but it's more of a coin flip, and I'm going with the home team. And don't forget, this game is going to be at 9:30 a.m. on Sunday. So make sure if you have any players in this one, put them in either the wide receiver or the running back slot. Do not leave them in your flex position. Gives you more flexibility for Sunday. Also, make sure that if you have any of these players, you're either playing them or not playing them on purpose. Last thing you want is to wake up at 9:30 and not get to maneuver your team how you need to. So make that change now so you don't have to think about it then. And that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell down below. If you have any questions, hit me up. Check out my other videos if you want to see any more breakdowns or pigskin pick'em. Good luck in your matchups this week. Peace. Good afternoon, Bay Nation. Welcome to another episode of Fantasy Bay. I'm your host, Mike Williams, and today we're going to be going over the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Washington football team. Starting off with the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, you're starting Patrick Mahomes. He's an absolute beast. Fire him up every week. Moving on to the wide receiver position. And every week you start Tyreek Hill and nobody else from this receiving core because you never know who it's going to be. Moving on to the running back position. This is where it gets interesting, folks. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is actually out in this matchup. He's currently on IR, so he won't be playing for the next 3 weeks. Moving on to Darrell Williams. Darrell Williams is going to be the starting running back for the Kansas City Chiefs for the next few weeks. I do believe they mix in Jerick McKinnon, so it won't be a one-man show. I do believe they split the work, but leaning more towards Darrell Williams. The Chiefs definitely trust him in the red zone. Moving on to the tight end position, obviously you start Travis Kelce every single week. He's an absolute beast. Best tight end in the league. Moving on to the defense. No. Kicker, yes. All right, now we're going on to the Washington football team. Taylor Heinicke, I think, can be a solid start this week. What we know about the Chiefs is they're going to put up points. And their defense isn't too great. So I think Taylor Heinicke's going to have a fine week this week. Fire him up if you need a quarterback. Moving on to the wide receiver position. Everybody's starting Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin is an absolute beast. He's going to be a high-end wide receiver too with upside. And I'm not starting any other receivers on this team. Moving on to the running back position, obviously you fire up Antonio Gibson. I see him as a running back too with upside moving forward. I actually think in this matchup it'd be a solid play for J.D. McKissic. J.D. McKissic is a receiving back, and the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be up in this game. So they're going to have to come back. And I don't know why they don't want to give the ball to Antonio Gibson in the passing game, but they don't. J.D. McKissic is apparently that dude. So look out for him getting some touches in the receiving game. Moving on to the tight end position, I definitely think you can start up Ricky Seals-Jones. He's proven he's going to be involved in this offense, and like I said before, this should be a high-scoring game. The Chiefs are going to put up some points, and if the Washington football team wants to win it, they're going to have to keep up because their defense isn't locking people down. And they're definitely not locking down the Kansas City Chiefs Not when they're 2-3. They need a win at this point. They're not losing to Washington. Moving on. No to the defense, no to the kicker. All right, that's the fantasy breakdown for this matchup. Moving on to Pigskin Pick'em. The Kansas City Chiefs are favored by 6.5 points. Give me the Chiefs in this one. The Chiefs need a win, like desperately. 2-3 to start the year? Oof. Mind you, they've had a pretty tough schedule so far, so I think this is a get-right game. Washington puts up a fight, but they're definitely going to lose. All right, that's going to do it for this matchup. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell down below. If you have any questions, hit me up. And if you like this content and you want some more like it, check out my page where I break down every game and Pigskin Pick'em as well. So good luck in your matchups this week. Peace. Good afternoon, Bay Nation. Welcome to another episode of Fantasy Bay. I'm your host, Mike Williams, and today we're going to be going over the Los Angeles Rams versus the New York Giants. And let's start off with those Rams. Starting at the top, I think Matthew Stafford is a solid start in this matchup. The Giants don't scare me, and I definitely think he's going to throw up some points. Moving on to the wide receiver position, you're obviously starting Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. Robert Woods had a fantastic bounce back game last week, like I predicted. Hopefully you're watching my channel and you knew to put him in. If not, you're here now and that's what's important, so fire him up this week. Moving on to the running back position, fire up Darrell Henderson. I definitely think he's going to be a great play this week. I have him as a high-end running back 2, low-end running back 1. Sony Michel isn't a player that I think you should be trying to start. I do think that he is going to be involved, mainly because Darrell Henderson seems to be getting minor dings and coming out of the game for a little bit, but regardless, I'm not starting Sony Michel, but I do think he's a fantastic handcuff at the moment. Moving on to the tight end position, Tyler Higbee's going to be a fine start. I think he's going to be a top 12 tight end, but I mean, well, he's not really saying too much right now. So if you have been starting him, I'm assuming you're probably going to keep starting him. Moving on to the defense, I think that this is going to be the best defense of the week. The Giants are dinged up, but it's going to be a lot of turnovers. So fire up your Rams defense and fire up that kicker. Moving on to the New York Giants. Daniel Jones was in concussion protocol, but I do believe he's going to start. That doesn't mean he has to start for you, though. The Rams are a tough defense. I think that they're going to eat him alive. Moving on to the wide receiver position, Kenny Golladay seems dinged up, so I don't believe he's going to play. Even if he does play, I'd be hesitant to play him. Sterling Shepard coming back from injury. I do believe he has a chance to play. I'm not trying to start him either. Moving on to Kadarius Toney. He had a fantastic week last week. Hopefully you picked him up because he was expensive if you got him off the waiver wire. I don't think this is a good matchup for him, though. Like I said, the Rams are an incredible defense, and I definitely think he's going to get some coverage after that incredible week last week. So temper your expectations. If you start him, have him as a flex play at best. Saquon Barkley unfortunately has an injury and will not be started in this game. Devontae Booker is one of the best pickups this week because he's going to get the opportunities. But he's going against the Rams. The Rams have been fairly average against the run this year, so you're not really afraid of the matchup, but there's not going to be a lot going on in this offense, so I definitely think that he could get some targets. Devontae Booker is solid in the rushing game and the receiving game, so I think he's going to have a fine day, but I think his upside is definitely limited. And I don't really have a lot of confidence in Evan Ingram. He'd be a flyer at best, but I prefer to go in another direction if I could. And no to the defense, no to the kicker. That's going to do it for the fantasy breakdown of this episode. Moving on to Pigskin Pick'em. The Rams are 10.5 point favorites in this matchup. Give me the Rams. I just think that the Rams are a much better team. They're less injured, and they're going to dominate them. Their defense is incredible. Their offense is incredible. So I just think that they're going to run through the Giants. And that's going to do it for this matchup. If you have any questions, hit me up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell down below. If you like this kind of content, check out the page and see all my other game breakdowns as well as the eliminator pool. Good luck in your matchups this week. Peace. Good afternoon, Bay Nation. Welcome to another episode of Fantasy Bay. I'm your host, Mike Williams, and today we're going to be going over the Green Bay Packers versus the Chicago Bears. Da Bears, da Bears, da Bears, da Bears, da Bears. Let's start off with those Green Bay Packers. You're obviously playing Aaron Rodgers, so fire him up. Moving on to the wide receiver position, the only reliable receiver they have, Devontae Adams, one of the best in the league, if not the best. You fire him up every week. I'm going to be passing on all the other receivers. Moving on to the running back position, you obviously fire up Aaron Jones. That being said, A.J. Dillon is starting to eat into Aaron Jones' work. The last 2 weeks, A.J. Dillon has had more fantasy points than Aaron Jones. I'm not saying that Aaron Jones is better, but I am saying that A.J. Dillon is starting to become a flex play candidate. I definitely think in a pinch, he could be used as a flex play. I don't think that this week is the week because the Bears are fairly solid against the run game, but I do think that you'll be utilizing A.J. Dillon in the weeks to come as a flex play. Moving on to the tight end position, Robert Tonyan, you can play him if you think they're going to get him a touchdown. Other than that, you're really just throwing darts. I'm good. I'm not really trying to play Robert Tonyan. Moving on to the defense, I think the Packers are a solid defense against the Chicago Bears. Justin Fields has proven that he is not a great quarterback yet. He's still young. He's got time to grow. Moving on to the kicker. No. Did you see all those kicks he missed last week? I'm good. On to the Chicago Bears. Starting at the top, Justin Fields. Like I said before, he's got a bright future ahead, but this is fantasy football. Ain't nobody starting him. Moving on to the wide receiver position, and you shouldn't start either one of these. I never thought I'd see a day where Allen Robinson is not good in fantasy football, but he's not. He's been terrible all year. His best game was wide receiver 45, and that's his best. I'm talking he's got some 60s and 70s in there. It's been horrific. Bench Allen Robinson if you can. I know some of you can't. I'm in one of those positions too. I'm choosing between him and James Conner. Oh, it has not been a good year for Allen Robinson so far. You can't bench him, don't be afraid. Throw him on your bench. I do think eventually he'll turn it around, but he needs the targets and he's not getting them right now. Oh my gosh, horrific. Moving on to the running back position. Not only is David Montgomery out, but so is Damian Williams, the backup to David Montgomery. So hopefully you watched the waiver wire episode where I told you to pick up Khalil Herbert. He's going to come in handy because he's now the starting running back for the Chicago Bears. So I definitely think you can fire him up as a low-end running back too, high-end flex play. Moving on to tight end, no. Defense, no. Kicker, no. All right, that's going to do it for the fantasy breakdown of this game. Now it's time for Pigskin Pick'em. The Green Bay Packers are 4.5-point favorites in this matchup, and I'm going to have to go with those Packers. I know this is a divisional game, so they normally are pretty close, but I do think that Aaron Rodgers can win by more than 4.5. So that's going to do it for this matchup. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell down below. If you have any questions, hit me up. And if you like this content, check out my page where I break down the rest of the games of the week. So good luck on your matchup this week. Peace. Good afternoon, Bay Nation. Welcome to another episode of Fantasy Bay. I'm your host, Mike Williams, and today we're going to be going over the Baltimore Ravens versus the Los Angeles Chargers. So let's start off with those Ravens. Obviously, you're starting Lamar Jackson. He's an absolute beast. You fire him up every week. Moving on to the wide receiver position, I definitely think you can start Hollywood! Hollywood Brown is a fire up every week. He has been playing fantastic. He's only had one down week this year. I definitely think you fire him up as a wide receiver 2 with upside. Moving on to the running back position, this is where it gets tricky. They have too many cooks in the kitchen. I do think the lead running back right now is Latavius Murray. I think you can fire him up as a flex play. The Chargers have been terrible against the run. I definitely think they're going to utilize Latavius Murray. There's always a chance to get other running backs involved, so be careful with that one. He's a flex play, but not one with huge upside. Moving on to the tight end position, and Mark Andrews had an absolutely incredible week last week. And it cost me a matchup, not going to lie. It hurt me here. I was up by a solid amount going in, but that's what fantasy football does. Makes miracles and downfalls. So that's fantasy for you. Mark Andrews dominated last week, and I think he has another great week this week. Fire him up. Moving on to defense, no thank you. Kicker, yes, you always start Justin Tucker. He's an absolute beast. My personal favorite kicker in the league. Moving on to the Los Angeles Chargers. You start Justin Herbert every week. He's been playing absolutely incredible, so fire him up. Moving on to the wide receiver position, you're also playing these guys, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. They're absolute beasts, so you fire them up every week. Moving on to the running back position, you definitely start Austin Eckler, top 5 running back in the league. And if you remember, my league winner before the season started, let's go! Moving on to the tight end position, I do think you can play Jared Cook if you're desperate. I'm not super excited about him, but I do think that he's going to be involved enough to have him in your lineup, and for a tight end, that's kind of what you're asking for. He could slide into the end zone too. Moving on to the defense, no. Kicker, no. And that's going to do it for the fantasy outlook for this game. Moving on to Pigskin Pick'em. I was kind of surprised to find out the spread in this one. The Ravens are 3.5-point favorites in this one. Give me the Chargers. I cannot believe they gave him 3.5 points. This should have been a pick'em at best. I definitely think the Chargers are going to cover this spread, and they definitely could win it. The Ravens almost lost to the Colts last week. That was outrageous. So that's going to do it for this matchup. If you have any questions, hit me up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell down below. If you like this content, check out my page where I go over every single game for the week, as well as the Eliminator Challenge. Good luck this week, everyone. Peace. Good afternoon, Bay Nation. Welcome to another episode of Fantasy Bay. I'm your host, Mike Williams, and today we're going to be going over the Arizona Cardinals versus the Cleveland Browns. Let's start off with the Browns in this one. Baker Mayfield is not relevant for fantasy football. Sit him on your bench. Moving on to the wide receiver position, Odell Beckham Jr. somehow can't get on the same page as Baker Mayfield. The last 2 weeks, he's been wide receiver 79th or worse. That is terrible. Don't be afraid to bench Odell Beckham Jr. The Cleveland Browns are a running team, which is why Odell Beckham does not get as involved. The best chance that Odell Beckham Jr. has to get involved is if they're down. And I think they could be down against the Cardinals this week. So if you do play Odell, he's a flex play. Moving on to the running back position, Nick Chubb is actually going to be out in this game, unfortunately. That's definitely going to elevate Kareem Hunt from running back 2 to possibly running back 1 this week. He's an absolute beast, and they're going to feed him in the run game and the pass game. The Arizona Cardinals have been really good against the run game this year, but I still think that Kareem Hunt is going to be a fine play. So fire him up. I definitely think he still has running back 1 upside. Moving on to the tight end position, David Njoku had an incredible week last week. If you play him this week, you're really chasing the points. That doesn't work out too often, so I kind of want to tell you not to. But the tight end landscape out there is horrific, so there's a chance that you could have to play him, but there's a lot of other options out there that I think are better than him. Moving on to the defense, I think that they are playable, but not a defense that I'm trying to play this week. I just think that the Cardinals are a good offense. There's always a chance they can drop 30 on you. Moving on to the Arizona Cardinals. At the quarterback position, you're obviously starting Kyler Murray. Moving on to the wide receiver position, you start DeAndre Hopkins every single week. After that, where do you feel lucky? Rondale Moore is a flex play. To be honest with you, they're going to move it around a lot, so it's hard to decide other than DeAndre Hopkins who it's going to go to. Also, Cliff Kingsbury is not going to be with the team on this one. He has COVID-19, so he will be sitting out this matchup. That's definitely going to cause a little more confusion than it normally does. Let's see if they can keep that undefeated streak moving. And for the running back position, Chase Edmonds has proven that he's going to be involved in the passing game. In fantasy football, the pass-catching running back's the one you want. So Chase Edmonds is going to be a fine running back 2 this week. And I think that James Conner would be a solid flex play if you need him. He could always fall into the end zone. Max Williams is out for this game, and the team has signed Zach Ertz from the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that's going to be a great addition to this team, but Zach Ertz can't play this week because he already played on Thursday against the Buccaneers. So the Cardinals are going to have to wait till next week to install him in the offense. Moving on to the defense, I think they can be played, but I'm not excited about it because the Browns are a good offense. So that's going to do it for the fantasy outlook of this matchup. Moving on to Pigskin Pick'em. The Browns are 2.5-point favorites in this matchup, but I'm still going with the Cardinals. Someone's going to have to prove to me that they can beat them. That the Cardinals are playing really well, and even without Cliff Kingsbury, I think that they can take this matchup. So that's going to do it for this episode. If you have any questions, hit me up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell down below. And if you like this content, check out my page where I break down every game this week, as well as the Eliminator Challenge. Good luck in your matchups this week. Peace. Good afternoon, Bay Nation. Welcome to another episode of Fantasy Bay. I'm your host, Mike Williams, and today we're going to be going over the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Seattle Seahawks. And let's start with those Steelers. Starting at the top, Big Ben has not been playing well, so you're definitely not starting him. Moving on to the wide receiver position, Juju Smith-Schuster is out. Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool are fine plays in this matchup. Deontay Johnson is going to be fantastic. I definitely think he's going to be the PPR guy. And I think Chase Claypool is going to be at more targets now that Juju Smith-Schuster's out. I have Deontay Johnson as a wide receiver 1 and Chase Claypool as a wide receiver 2. Moving on to the running back position, everybody knows you're starting Najee Harris. He's an absolute beast. Fire him up every week. Moving on to the tight end, no. Defense, absolutely. Best defense in the league this week. Moving on to the kicker, sure, why not? Up next, we have the Seattle Seahawks. Starting at the top, Russell Wilson is not going to be playing in this game. He's been placed on IR with a finger injury. If you saw the game the other day, it was not pretty. I can understand why he's going to be out. Get better soon, Russ. We need you back. Geno Smith will be playing in his stead, and he is not fantasy viable, so get him out of here. Moving on to the wide receiver position, you obviously fire up DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, but the upside has been capped with Geno Smith at the quarterback. That being said, the Steelers, if you're going to attack them anywhere, you want to attack them in the air. So I do still think that they have a solid game. I have DK Metcalf as a low-end wide receiver 1, and I have Tyler Lockett as a flex play. But I do think that Geno Smith will push the ball down the field and have a solid game. Moving on to the running back position, Chris Carson is out for this game, so fire up your Alexander Mattison. I definitely think that it's going to be a tough game for him going against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are good against the run game, but if you're desperate, he will be a starting running back this week. Moving on to the tight end position, no thank you. Defense, no. Kicker, no. That's it for the fantasy breakdown of this episode. Moving on to Pigskin Pick'em. The Steelers are 4.5-point favorites in this matchup. Give me the Steelers. Don't think the Seattle Seahawks will play better than people are expecting. I just think that the defense of the Steelers is going to give them a tough time. They'll probably get a turnover or two. And to be honest with you, Najee Harris is just going to run down the Seattle Seahawks' throats. The Seahawks aren't going to be able to stop them. I do think they put up a fight, but the Steelers pull away at the end. So that's going to do it for this matchup. If you have any questions, hit me up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell down below. If you like this content, check out my page where I break down every game this week as well as give a pick for the Eliminator Challenge. Good luck in your matchups this week. Peace. Good afternoon, Bay Nation. Welcome to another episode of Fantasy Bay. I'm your host, Mike Williams, and today we're going to be going over the Buffalo Bills versus the Tennessee Titans. And let's start off with those Titans. Before I get into the players, just a heads up, this is a tough matchup for the Tennessee Titans. Not just because their team has had players in and out of the lineup, but the Buffalo Bills are an incredible defense across the board. So it's going to be tough for everybody on this team. But now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get started with the breakdown. Starting with Ryan Tannehill. I think Ryan Tannehill is playable, especially with Julio Jones back, assuming that he gets to play. It is nerve-wracking, though, because the Buffalo Bills are great against the quarterback. So I think that there are better options out there, but I do think you can play Ryan Tannehill. I wouldn't expect a high upside. Moving on to the wide receiver position, A.J. Brown is back. He's just not playing great. I see him more as a flex play right now until he proves otherwise. I do think that he is going to be fantastic moving forward, but this may not be the matchup that he shows out. Up next, we have Julio Jones. Julio Jones has been dinged up, but he was back at practice. I think that you can fire up Julio Jones as a flex play. I'm not super confident, but if the Bills are shifting to A.J. Brown, which they are projected to do, I do think that Julio Jones might be able to get some work done, but honestly, I would prefer to bench him this week and play him next week with some more snaps under his belt and a better matchup. Moving on to the running back position, everybody's starting Derrick Henry. You don't even look at the matchups. He's an absolute beast. You fire him up every week. Derrick Henry is a monster. Derrick Henry doesn't even sniff the bench. I don't even put him in my flex if I don't have to. Derrick Henry is a running back 1 every single week. Book it. Moving on to the tight end position, no thank you. Defense, no. Kicker, no. On to the Buffalo Bills. Starting at the top, Josh Allen's a beast. You fire him up every week. On to the wide receivers, Stephon Diggs. This is the game Stephon Diggs shows out. Stephon Diggs has not been playing great so far this year, but I do believe that the Tennessee Titans are a get-right game for him. I also like Emmanuel Sanders in this matchup. Like I said, the Titans are not good against the wide receiver. So I definitely think Emmanuel Sanders is a solid flex play with some upside. Cole Beasley is fine to play, but he has not been as involved, and I would have him as a low-end flex play if you're desperate. I prefer not to play him, but I still think he can. Moving on to the running back position, Zach Moss is going to be the lead running back in this backfield, putting him as a running back 2, and Devin Singletary is more of a flex play. Moving on to the tight end position, Dawson Knox has been playing fantastic. Fire him up every week. He is a tight end 1. Moving on to the defense, yes, you absolutely play the defense against the Titans. Yes, I know that the Titans could have a solid game. The problem is the Bills' defense has been doing work against everybody, so fire him up. And you fire up that kicker. That's going to do it for the fantasy breakdown of this game. Moving on to Pigskin Pick'em. The Buffalo Bills are 5.5-point favorites in this matchup. And honestly, I was going back and forth between them and the Titans, but I'm going to have to go with the Bills. Between their firepower and their defense being incredible, I just don't think that the Titans are going to be able to keep up. That being said, I was back and forth on this one because I do think that the Titans can pull it together. But with Julio Jones just getting back, needing to gel into the offense, I just don't think that they're going to be a match for the Bills. The Bills are going to pull away at the end. So that's going to do it for this matchup. If you have any questions, hit me up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell down below. And if you like this content, check out my page where I go over every game of the week and do the Eliminator Challenge. Good luck in your matchup this week. Peace.